The planet Xylar orbited a binary sun, casting long violet shadows across its metallic landscape. Home to the Zz'glorg, a species renowned throughout the galaxy for their hyper-logical minds and unwavering adherence to protocol, Xylar was anything but a vacation destination. The Zz'glorg, with their chitinous exoskeletons and multifaceted eyes, considered emotion an illogical flaw, a virus in the otherwise perfect machine of their society. Their greatest cultural export, ironically, was the Contest of Champions, a gladiatorial game show broadcast across known space. This wasn't entertainment in the human sense. It was a complex equation of strategy, combat prowess, and statistical probability, designed to test the limits of physical and mental endurance. The Zz'glorg analyzed every move, every parry, every drop of simulated alien blood, cataloging data for optimizing societal efficiency. And then there was Bob. Bob wasn't supposed to be there. One minute he was enjoying a questionable burrito at a truck stop just outside Roswell, New Mexico, and the next, he was blinking against the harsh glare of Xylar's twin suns clad in ill-fitting metallic armor. The details of his abduction remained hazy, involving something about a temporal anomaly and a miscalibration of the interdimensional transport matrix, or so the Zz'glorg drones had droned. Bob, a man whose greatest ambition involved perfecting his chili recipe and avoiding any form of strenuous activity, was now a contestant in the Contest of Champions. He squinted, adjusted the itchy armor, and sighed. Well, he muttered to himself, this is just prime. The arena was a colossal structure of polished obsidian, filled with the low hum of Zz'glorg anticipation. Thousands of multifaceted eyes focused on Bob, their expressions unreadable, their expectations undoubtedly grim. Bob, however, wasn't particularly worried. He'd faced worse. Like that time he accidentally set his apartment on fire trying to deep-fry a turkey. His opponent, a hulking Grolak warrior with razor-sharp claws and an intimidating snarl, sized him up. The Grolak roared, a sound that echoed through the arena, vibrating in Bob's chest. Bob, in response, gave a small wave. This was going to be interesting. The Zz'glorg Prime Overseer, a particularly large and imposing specimen named Zorgan 7, watched from his elevated platform. His antennae twitched with a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. This Bob, this human, was an anomaly. His physiological readings were within acceptable parameters for a sentient bipedal life form, but his behavior defied all logical prediction. Zorgan 7 consulted his data slate. The human's file was sparse, filled with perplexing contradictions. Enjoys sitcoms, it read. Consumes nachos, frequently engages in naps. None of this made any sense. The Contest of Champions was a serious matter, a cornerstone of Zz'glorg society. It was a testament to their intellectual superiority, their mastery of strategic warfare. It was not, under any circumstances, supposed to be funny. But something about this human, this Bob, suggested that humor, or at least some crude approximation of it, was about to play a significant role. Zorgan 7 braced himself. The calculations were already going awry. The variables were multiplying. This human, Bob, was about to disrupt the perfectly ordered world of Xylar, and Zorgan 7, despite his logical programming, couldn't help but feel a flicker of anticipation. The games were about to begin, and the universe, it seemed, was about to get a whole lot weirder. The starting klaxon blared, a high-pitched shriek that would have sent lesser beings scrambling for cover. The Grolak charged, claws extended, ready to tear Bob limb from limb. Bob, however, remained rooted to the spot, a strange expression on his face. He didn't raise his weapon. He didn't even flinch. Instead, he cleared his throat and addressed the assembled multitude of Zz'glorg and other assorted alien spectators. So, he began, his voice echoing through the arena. Anyone here ever try explaining the rules of baseball to anyone who isn't from Earth, it's a nightmare, right? The Grolak paused mid-charge, confusion warring with its predatory instincts. The Zz'glorg in the stands tilted their multifaceted eyes, their antennae twitching in unison. Zorgan 7 on his platform stared at his data slate, which was now flashing a series of error messages. This was not in the manual, Bob continued, oblivious to the bewildered silence. I mean, seriously, 3 strikes and you're out? What kind of arbitrary rule is that? It's like saying, okay, you get 3 chances to defuse this bomb, and if you fail, kaboom, no more bomb defusing for you. He paused for dramatic effect. Come to think of it, that's probably more reasonable than baseball. The Grolak, thoroughly discombobulated, lowered its claws slightly. It had been trained to fight, to kill, to conquer. It had not been trained to understand whatever this was. It certainly hadn't been briefed on the nuances of human sports. In the stands, a few of the younger Zz'glorg began to emit a series of high-pitched clicks, a sound that, according to Zorgon 7's rapidly overheating data slate, approximated human laughter. Zorgon 7 felt a disturbing sensation in his exoskeleton, a feeling he could only describe as bewilderment. Bob, sensing a slight shift in the atmosphere, pressed on. And don't even get me started on cricket, he said, shaking his head. I swear that game was invented by a committee of sadists trying to make baseball look exciting. He sighed dramatically. Honestly, you'd think with all the advanced technology in the galaxy, someone would have invented a better sport by now. Something with, lasers. The Grolak, now completely baffled, took a step back. Its primal instincts were screaming at it to attack, but its limited intellect was struggling to process the sheer absurdity of the situation. Was this some kind of advanced psychological warfare? Was the human trying to lull it into a false sense of security with jokes? Zorgon 7's data slate issued a warning. Probability of expected outcome, 0.001%. System malfunction imminent. He ignored it. He was too engrossed in the spectacle unfolding before him. This human, this Bob, was defying all logic, all reason, all established protocols. And, disturbingly, Zorgon 7 found himself intrigued. Bob, seeing that he had effectively neutralized his opponent with the sheer force of his mediocre stand-up routine, decided to push his luck. So, he said, addressing the Grolak directly, you ever wonder why they call it fighting, when all you're really doing is hitting each other? I mean, shouldn't it be called hittinging, or maybe punchy time? The Grolak let out a frustrated groan and charged again, claws slashing wildly. But Bob, emboldened by his previous success, simply sidestepped the attack and continued his impromptu comedy routine. Whoa there, buddy, he said, dodging another swipe. No need to get all stabby. I'm just trying to lighten the mood. Break the ice. Though, come to think of it, breaking ice with claws like those would probably be pretty easy. You could probably make a fortune selling ice sculptures. The Grolak, now frothing at the mouth with rage and confusion, roared again, a sound that was quickly drowned out by the growing chorus of high-pitched clicks emanating from the Zz'glorg audience. They were laughing. The Zz'glorg were actually laughing. Zorgon 7 watched in stunned silence as the contest of champions devolved into a bizarre comedy show. His data slate finally gave up and shut down completely. He didn't care. He was witnessing something truly extraordinary, something that transcended all logic, all reason, all understanding. Bob, meanwhile, was in his element. He was riffing. He was rolling. He was connecting with an audience of emotionless, chitinous aliens. He was, against all odds, killing it. And the Grolak, defeated not by force but by sheer comedic ineptitude, slumped to the ground, utterly bewildered. The human Bob had won. Not by fighting, but by being Bob. And the galaxy, it seemed, would never be the same. Bob's initial victory, a fluke of comedic timing and alien bewilderment, was just the beginning. He was scheduled for more fights, and each time he refused to conform to the gladiatorial expectations. The Zz'glorg expected brutal efficiency. Bob delivered performance art. His next opponent was a Krillian deathworm, a creature known for its venomous bite and constricting coils. As the Krillian lunged, Bob didn't reach for the provided plasma rifle. Instead, he picked up a discarded length of metallic tubing and began playing it like a didgeridoo, producing a series of surprisingly melodic, if somewhat off-key drones. The Krillian deathworm paused, its beady eyes blinking in confusion. The audience, initially anticipating a swift and gruesome kill, began to murmur amongst themselves. The Zz'glorg authorities, watching from their elevated platforms, exchanged nervous glances. This was unexpected. Undeterred, Bob continued his impromptu concert, improvising a bizarre soundscape that somehow managed to blend elements of blues, techno, and whale song. The Krillian deathworm, hypnotized by the strange music, began swaying rhythmically. A few of the younger Zz'glorg started tapping their feet, or whatever passed for feet in their species. It wasn't just the fighting. The weapons provided for the arena seemed to fascinate Bob, but not in the way the Zz'glorg intended. Presented with a gravity disruptor, designed to crush opponents with localized gravitational fields, Bob used it to juggle rocks. The audience was perplexed but strangely entertained. Another time, he faced a robotic assassin armed with a sonic disruptor. Instead of using his own weapon, Bob grabbed a nearby metal sheet and began reflecting the sonic waves back at the robot, creating a cacophony of echoes that short-circuited its systems. He then proceeded to use the deactivated robot as a makeshift hat stand. These actions, while seemingly random and illogical, began to resonate with the audience. The Zz'glorg, a species driven by logic and efficiency, found themselves inexplicably drawn to Bob's chaotic unpredictability. It was different. It was entertaining. The Zz'glorg authorities, however, were not amused. Zorgon 7, promoted, after Bob's first victory, a decision he still couldn't quite comprehend, felt a knot of anxiety tightening in his exoskeleton. This human was destabilizing the entire game show, undermining the very foundations of Xylarian society. Rumors began to circulate among the Zz'glorg elite. Was Bob a spy? A saboteur? A philosopher sent to challenge their rigid worldview? The possibilities were endless, and none of them were good. Zorgon 7 knew he had to do something. He had to understand Bob. He had to investigate. The tension, in the arena and across Xylar, was rising with each passing performance. Zorgon 7 initiated a full investigation into Bob's background. He allocated a team of his most logical analysts to sift through every available piece of information, every digital record, every human meme. The task was daunting, bordering on the incomprehensible. The analysts started with Bob's official records. They discovered a planet called Earth, a Class M world teeming with illogical organisms and baffling social customs. According to their databases, Earth was a haven for irrationality. It was unsettling. Bob's personal history was equally perplexing. His file described a series of mundane jobs: office worker, dog walker, pizza delivery guy. Nothing indicated any special combat training, strategic genius, or even a basic understanding of intergalactic politics. He was, by all accounts, utterly ordinary. The analysts then turned to human cultural artifacts, hoping to find some clue to Bob's behavior. They encountered things called sitcoms, reality TV, and something disturbingly named cat videos. The purpose of these artifacts was unclear, but they seemed to involve a lot of pointless chatter and bizarre physical comedy. The more they learned, the more confused they became. Human humor in particular was a source of constant frustration. Why did humans find it amusing when someone slipped on a banana peel? Why did they tell stories with deliberately nonsensical punchlines? It defied all logic. Zorgon 7, reviewing the initial findings, felt a growing sense of unease. The human mind, it seemed, was a chaotic and unpredictable landscape, governed by rules that were entirely alien to the Zz'glorg's rigid, logical framework. He began to suspect that Bob wasn't following any rules at all. The analysts attempted to predict Bob's future actions using advanced algorithms and behavioral models. But every simulation ended in failure. Bob's behavior was simply too random, too illogical. He was an anomaly, a glitch in the system. The investigation stalled. The Zz'glorg's most sophisticated analytical tools were useless against the humans. What? Lack of a strategy? Unintentional genius? It was all so baffling. Zz'glorg felt a creeping sense of dread. What if Bob's unpredictability wasn't a flaw, but a weapon? As the investigation floundered, Bob continued his performances in the arena, growing more audacious with each passing day. The audience, captivated by his antics, demanded more. The Zz'glorg authorities were losing control, and Zz'glorg knew he had to act fast. He decided to unveil their ultimate weapon, hoping to finally break Bob's spirit and restore order to the game show. The moment arrived during the next cycle of the game show. Zz'glorg, his faceplate gleaming under the harsh arena lights, announced a special presentation. He declared, in booming Zz'glorg tones, that they would now reveal their most formidable instrument of fear and subjugation, the ultimate weapon. A hush fell over the audience, a silence deeper than any Bob had previously encountered. Even the perpetually amused Glarbonians seemed to hold their breath, antennae twitching with anticipation. The air crackled with manufactured tension. From the depths of the arena, a platform slowly rose, bathed in an ominous red glow. Upon it sat a gleaming chrome device of intricate design. It bristled with antennae, pulsated with internal light, and emitted a low, guttural hum that vibrated through the floor. Zz'glorg stepped forward, his voice dripping with theatrical menace. "Behold," he proclaimed, "the Terror Inducer 5000. This device is capable of projecting waves of pure fear directly into the minds of your enemies. It will break their will, crush their spirits, and leave them begging for mercy." Bob squinted at the device, tilting his head. He circled the platform, examining it from every angle. He tapped a few of the antennae, causing them to wobble comically. He even sniffed at a small vent, as if trying to identify its scent. "So," Bob said, finally breaking the silence with his usual casual drawl, "what exactly does this thing do?" Zz'glorg faceplate seemed to tighten. "It induces terror, human. Unspeakable dread. It will reveal your deepest fears and exploit them without mercy." Bob paused, scratching his chin thoughtfully. "Huh," he said. "Looks more like a popcorn maker to me." A collective gasp swept through the arena. The Glarbonians choked on their nutrient goo. The Corel sputtered in disbelief, and Zz'glorg nearly short-circuited his own biocircuitry. "Popcorn maker?" Zz'glorg stammered, his voice losing its theatrical edge. "Preposterous. This is a weapon of unparalleled psychological warfare." Bob shrugged. "Well, yeah, I mean, if you're trying to scare someone with delicious, buttery popcorn, 'cause that's totally what this is. See? It's even got a little measuring cup for the kernels." Bob pointed to a small, detachable container on the side of the device. "And a warming tray to keep it fresh. Pretty fancy model, actually." Bob grinned, a mischievous glint in his eyes. He sauntered over to the control panel of the Terror Inducer 5000, or as he now considered it, his new best friend. With a few well-placed prods and pokes, he bypassed the Zz'glorg safety protocols, which admittedly were about as effective as a screen door on a submarine. He cranked the power dial to maximum. A whirring sound filled the arena, growing louder and more intense. The antennae on the device began to glow with an almost blinding light. A strange popping noise erupted from within, followed by a plume of white, fluffy material shooting out of the machine's main chamber. It wasn't terror. It was popcorn. Mountains of it. The arena erupted in a blizzard of fluffy kernels. Popcorn rained down on the audience, coating the Glarbonians in a buttery sheen, filling the Krell's breathing tubes, and sticking to Zz'glorg faceplate like some kind of bizarre, edible adhesive. The smell of freshly popped corn filled the air, overpowering the usual sterile scent of the arena. Then, something unexpected happened. The audience started to laugh. Not the polite, nervous chuckles that Bob had previously elicited, but genuine, unadulterated laughter. The Glarbonians, initially startled, began batting the popcorn around with their antennae, giggling like children. The Krell, after managing to clear their breathing tubes, let out a series of high-pitched squeaks that Bob interpreted as mirth. Even the stoic Zz'glorg in the control booth could be seen twitching their ocular sensors in what might have been amusement. The sight of the popcorn cascading down, the sound of alien laughter echoing through the arena, and the sheer absurdity of the situation struck a chord. Bob had, unintentionally, turned the gladiatorial game show into the galaxy's largest, most bizarre movie night. Chaos reigned, but it was joyous chaos. The audience was no longer a collection of bloodthirsty spectators. They were participants in something fun, and in the midst of it all, Zz'glorg 7, covered head to toe in popcorn, found himself being hoisted onto the shoulders of a group of jubilant Glarbonians. Bob, still grinning, hopped onto the central platform, grabbing the nearest microphone, which, thankfully, wasn't disguised as a torture device. "All right, folks," he announced, his voice echoing through the arena. "Who's ready for round 2? And just like that, Bob, the accidental contestant, the stand-up comedian, the popcorn enthusiast, became the new host of the Xylar gladiatorial game show. His reign of humorous chaos had only just begun. Bob, now officially the Grand Poobah of Popcorn and Pain, a title he'd hastily scribbled on a nearby Zz'glorgian datapad, set about rebranding the game show. He envisioned a dazzling spectacle, a fusion of Earth-style entertainment and Xylarian oddities. He imagined juggling Glarbonian slime worms, Krellian karaoke, and a Zz'glorg 7 interpretive dance of the Galactic Treaty. The Zz'glorg, bless their logical, linear processors, were completely flummoxed. Their attempts to understand Bob's vision resulted in regulations like contestant units must maintain a 7.3 decibel vocal projection during karaoke segments, and slime worm trajectory vectors must adhere to established quadratic equations. Bob just shrugged and told them to roll with it. The first revamped game show was a learning experience. The Glarbonian slime worms, it turned out, had a penchant for biting off-key Krellian vocalists. The Zz'glorg 7 interpretive dance was surprisingly well received, though the audience did complain about the lack of pyrotechnics, and the popcorn, of course, was a runaway hit. One memorable segment involved Bob trying to teach a Zz'glorgian judge how to tell a joke. After 3 hours of meticulously diagramming the linguistic structure of a knock-knock joke, the Zz'glorg finally delivered its punchline. Knock knock, who's there? The inevitable heat death of the universe. The inevitable heat death of the universe who? The inevitable heat death of the universe which, given the second law of thermodynamics, renders all humor statistically irrelevant. The audience stared blankly. Bob just patted the Zz'glorg on its optical sensor and said, "Still working on the delivery, buddy." Despite the occasional mishap, the new game show was a resounding success. Audiences flocked from across the Xylar system to witness the chaotic spectacle. Even the Zz'glorg grudgingly had to admit that the ratings were up. One day, Bob found himself in the control booth with Overseer Zz'glorg Alpha, the highest-ranking Zz'glorg official he'd met. Zz'glorg Alpha was staring intently at a screen displaying the latest viewership numbers. "Human Bob," it said, its voice devoid of inflection. "Your methods are illogical, your humor is baffling, and your use of repurposed terror-inducing technology is unorthodox." Bob leaned back in his chair, munching on a handful of popcorn. "Yeah, well," he said, "sometimes the best way to conquer fear is with a little bit of butter and a whole lot of laughs." Zz'glorg Alpha paused, its optical sensors widening slightly. "Butter?" it queried. "Is that a component of your battle strategy?" Bob grinned. "Only the best kind." He paused, considering the Zz'glorg, and then said, "You know, Zz'glorg Alpha, you guys were trying so hard to figure out the ultimate weapon, the thing that would control everyone through fear, but maybe you were looking in the wrong place." He gestured to the cheering audience, the mountains of popcorn, the slime worm juggling. "Maybe the real power isn't in scaring people," he said, "but in making them happy. And sometimes, all it takes is a little bit of perspective and a whole lot of popcorn." The Zz'glorg predictably didn't get it, but as it watched the Glarbonians, Krell, and even a few Zz'glorg 7s dancing in the aisles, covered in popcorn and laughing like lunatics, a flicker of something resembling understanding seemed to cross its face. Maybe, just maybe, this human was on to something. As the credits rolled, or whatever the Xylarian equivalent of credits were, probably just a list of quadratic equations, Bob leaned into the microphone and said, And remember, folks, always, tip your slimeworm juggler. The crowd roared with laughter. Bob smiled. He had a feeling this was just the beginning of a very strange, very popcorn-filled era of entertainment.